Have you ever known a kid who, when asked about a particular type of food, they'll say, "Oh, I don't like that," and you know for a fact that they've never even tried it? Well, what I'm going to talk about today is that type of phenomenon, but rather than it affecting kids, from what I've seen, it affects adults. So what I'm going to do is describe something, a system, a way of living that's very different from the one that we've got now. And I want you to tell me whether you fancy it, whether you would like to live under that type of economic system. And then at the end of the video, you can tell me what the name of this economic system is, because it does have a name. But I think for many of you who've been programmed, it's a bit like that word association game. You know, if I say the word, you'll say unfair or evil or exploitation, and these words that most people use when they're asked to say what they think when they hear this phrase I'm going to use. This is what they've been programmed into by school, university in particular, and also the TV. Right, so the first thing then is, would you like to live in a country, in a society where theft was illegal? What I mean by that is, obviously theft in its conventional sense, but also, the type of scam that's very, very common, where somebody says, well, they send you or sell you unsolicited services. So they say, well, we provided you with X, Y, Z, and here's the bill for X, Y, Z. And the issue is, yeah, you owe them money, but you never consented to this exchange. They just imposed it on you. And another example would be, do you want to live in a society where you're allowed private property rights? And what I mean by that is the right to own something. So, for example, the right to own your own home, and once you own it, no one else is allowed to say to you, oh yeah, you own this, but you have to pay us £2,000 a year. Or we're going to tell you that you must install XYZ on your house or in your house, and if you don't, we're going to fine you. We're going to send you another bill. Would you like to live in a society where you have bodily autonomy, so you alone decides what goes inside your own body, and people are not allowed to coerce you, use any form of coercion, to try to force you against your will to ingest something? Would you like the freedom to express your ideas, engage in healthy debate and dialogue with people? Yeah, I'm talking about free speech. Would you like to live in a society where we go back to how it used to be, of sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me? So people are allowed to say whatever they want, and what people are not allowed to do is to say that you've broken the law, you've done something wrong, because some hurty words that have come out of your mouth have offended me. Because the issue with people taking offence is that it's subjective, not objective. And according to the great Scottish philosopher John Stuart Mill, we should actually use what's called the harm principle. So the state only has the right to get involved in matters with individuals when one of those individuals has either harmed another person's property or physically harmed them. Hurty words don't count when it comes to the harm principle. Would you like to go back to that, where people can get to the truth with a frank and honest exchange of ideas? Would you fancy that, when we actually had real science again, where a prevailing hypothesis can be challenged with new information? Would you like to go back to that, or do you think the state should regulate what people can and can't say? Would you like to live in a society where all transactions between individuals take place on a voluntary basis? So if you don't want to trade with somebody, you don't have to. Because in that situation, exchanges between individuals would have to be mutually beneficial, because if something wasn't, then if one of the parties felt exploited, they could withdraw from the exchange. Would you like that? Would you like to see an end to coerced exchange, whereby violence or the threat of violence is used by one party to force through an exchange, even if the person on the other side of that exchange didn't want it? So for example, you might be sent a bill for £2,000 for some services that you've not solicited. Would you like the right to withdraw from that exchange voluntarily, without any comeback, without any violence or the threat of violence being used against you, like being held against your will, or being beaten up until you pay the money, or held hostage until you paid the money? Over the last 3 years, we've all learnt that the government can't be trusted to provide education. Would you like to go back to a system whereby you decided where your kid was going to go to school and what they were going to be taught? Would you like to go back to that? And would you like your taxes put back into your pocket because you no longer have to pay for state schools? Of course, the same would apply to the health service. Do you think you get good value for money? Do you think the state can be trusted to provide healthcare after the last 3 years? Think very carefully about that one for the hardcore socialists. Do you think after the last 3 years the government can be trusted to provide healthcare? If you still do, give your head a wobble now. Would you like to live in a society where you decide who you want to be charitable towards? So, you might have a choice. You can either have somebody from Iraq or Afghanistan completely different culture to yours. They've never paid into your society. They've never contributed to it. Or would you rather your charity be directed at maybe somebody who has defended your country as part of the armed services? So would you like a choice over how you are charitable towards your fellow human beings? Would you like a choice over that decision, or would you want that decision made for you? Do you trust the government to be charitable with your money? Do you think that the likes of Rishi Sunak can spend your money more wisely than you can yourself? For example, if I was to give you, so let's imagine you've earned £1,000. Who will be able to spend your £1,000 better? Yourself, who knows your own tastes and preferences inside out, or Rishi Sunak, who doesn't, and who doesn't care about you at all? Oh, and do you rule out the possibility that he might steal some of it? Would you like the right to set up a business, or do you think that the government should decide whether you can or can't do that? So, would you like my freedom system, or would you like what you've currently got? There's a name for what you've currently got, and it's called socialism. In fact, actually, a better name for it would be authoritarianism, where the state decides what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed to spend your money on, what you're going to do for a living, what you can and can't say. Or do you prefer my system? Now, you can tell me in the comments what the name of the system is, because it begins with C, and as soon as I say it, it will just trigger a whole lot of programmed responses. A bit like the scene from the first Terminator movie, where Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, is repairing one of his eyes in a rented room somewhere. And the owner of the hotel comes up and says, "Oh, buddy, that smells terrible in there." And then his program response is you kind of like see flickering on his, because he's a computer, you see. And, there's like, fuck you, asshole. I think that's the one he selects. So it's a similar one to that. You've been programmed at school into thinking that capitalism is evil, right? What I would actually prefer to call it is just freedom, yeah? Or free market exchange. But the main characteristic of the system that we need to move to is freedom. And freedom is based on voluntary action, and it's decentralized. We choose what's going to be produced in society by casting spending votes in a daily economic election. And also there is inequality, and those that work hardest, those that show more entrepreneurial energy, those that show more desire to serve their fellow man and women earn more spending votes, so they get to consume more goods. On the other hand, if you're a good-for-nothing socialist who has a big entitled attitude and thinks that other people should look after them and they can just sit at home watching TV, well, in a system based on free markets, well, unless you serve, you're not going to get anything in return. And that's the system that I would like to see come back. Basically, it's a system based on individual liberty, freedom, and choice. And then also the other phrase, of course, is personal social responsibility. You're in charge of your own life, and what you're supposed to do on this earth is to speak the truth and serve your fellow man. And you do that through this thing called working. And the harder you work, the more you get in return. And that's all I want to say today. So God bless.